Dream so high, I dream so high, a galaxy so far and wide. A hero by my side with heart and might and starlit pride. A furry friend in battles fought who always stands so true then. All I wanted was a badass Wookiee. All I wanted was a badass Wookiee. All I wanted was a badass Wookiee. All I wanted was a badass Wookiee.
The Acolyte is over. At least season one's over. It was really set up for a season two. The end is like cliffhanger central. Big Yoda cameo at the end there. Also Darth Plagueis. Darth Plagiarist? I don't know how to pronounce that. Plagius? Darth Goose. Darth Goose Plague. Anyways, The Acolyte is done. I really despised the final episode. I think I knew I was going to because I've been talking about this. Even with some slightly better episodes towards the second half of the season, I couldn't see how they could possibly wrap things up in a satisfactory way. And sure enough, they don't. The main problem with this show is the twin storyline, Osha and May. And there's a number of problems behind this. Basically, what I would say is their twin arc, is not earned. Right? What we go basically, it's a very strange arc because Osha ends up going dark side. The one cool moment in this episode is when she bleeds the Kyber crystal red. That's in the lore. That's not made up for this show. A Sith can pour their hate and pain and rage into a Kyber crystal from a lightsaber they take from a Jedi and turn it red. That's the thing. But I don't think it was earned. I don't think Osha's turn to the dark side was earned even remotely. And I think it's very strange that they didn't have some sort of crisscross with May going to the light and her going to the dark. Like that would have required real work to make those emotional arcs actually pay off, and they just didn't get there. I also think that in that moment at the end where Osha is force choking Soul, that the acting is just fucking terrible. Now, I don't usually go into acting in these reviews. I usually focus on things like the script, cinematography, the production values, costumes, dialogue, etc., etc. I like to focus mostly on that stuff because I think a lot of it, when you're watching, like you can watch something like Fear the Walking Dead, you've got some great actors on that show, but the script is just so painfully bad that even the best actors, a lot of them alumni from shows like Deadwood and whatnot, they don't come off great. But I try not to critique the acting because it's like, okay, you're given these bad lines, you're given, bad direction. It's not edited well. At the end of the day, can you blame the actors? But I'm going to blame Amandla Stenberg, whatever her name is, who plays Osha and May here. I think she's been fairly bad throughout this season. This is not a role. I mean, maybe she'd be good in a different role, but in this role, and a lot of it I've thought, well, maybe it's just how it's written because it's written so poorly, but she's sitting there force choking Soul because she's so mad. She's so pissed to find out that he killed her mother and has been lying to her that she kills this man who has been her surrogate father her whole life effectively. And she has almost no expression on her face. She could just be, as far as I can tell, she is watching a television screen or something. She's watching something intently. The amount of emotion on her face is just, and it's not just the emotion on her face. When you're killing somebody by force choking them to death because you're in a rage of betrayal and hate, if I were directing this scene, I would want that character to become just slavering with hate, right? Just every ounce of her being just consumed by hate. Maybe even sobbing. She's as she kills him because this is someone she loves, right? This should be a moment of absolute anguish and pain. And it's just nothing. And now, sure, you can pull off a scene where someone is killed by someone who has no emotional response because they're a sociopath or something, but that's not what's happening here. And it's so weird. This is the emotional apex, right? There's even lines taken in this moment. The Khmer character tells Osha to, feel her anger and strike him down and your journey will be complete. These are lines paraphrased from the emotional apex of the original trilogy, when Luke is fighting Vader and the Emperor is telling him to feel his anger and to strike the Emperor down, right? This is all just copy pasted over. Oh, it's an Easter egg. Ooh. That is an amazing scene. The reason that Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie, whereas a lot of people are like, no, it's Empire Strikes Back. I get it. Empire Strikes Back is probably the better movie overall. But the reason I love the Return of the Jedi is the Ewoks. No, I'm just kidding. I love the Ewoks, but it's the scene at the end where Luke confronts his father and the Emperor. They have that incredible lightsaber battle. And there's just so much emotion in that scene. Every time I watch it, I get goosebumps. Luke is fighting his father, and he's fighting for his life, and he's filled with anguish because this is his father, but he's an evil bastard, right? And there's this Emperor sitting there, this smug bastard with his smug face, all wrinkly. And it's just this powerful moment. I think I think this moment is why Star Wars has struggled so hard to be good ever since, because it really is the culmination of the Skywalker story, of the bringing balance to the Force and all of that. I'm sorry, it's done. It's done right there when Luke doesn't turn to the dark side and then Vader turns back to the light. That is just perfect. It's perfect. It's the end. The end. We're done. Skywalker story is over right there. You cannot go back to it. You cannot go back in time to make it better. Everything since has been worse. That's focused on the Skywalker saga. Fight me on this. I'm sorry. It's true. But this tries to ape that, right? This scene in The Acolyte has the audacity and the arrogance to try to ape that scene. And also, at the same time, sort of the Anakin scene from the prequels, where he goes to the dark side, which, as many people have pointed out, isn't a very good scene. I agree, it's not a very good scene, because the prequels are dog water. The prequels are bad. I don't like the prequels. Every time people confront me about my criticism of Disney Star Wars, they're like, well, the prequels, this and this and this. And I'm like, yeah, fuck yeah, the prequels suck. But this is okay, this is the similar turn, to the dark side is Anakin, right? Yeah, so you're copying it's so derivative. This was supposed to be a new show, right? This was supposed to be a new show with set in a different era that wasn't focused on the Skywalkers, and now it seems to be leading to how did they create Anakin from the Force? We're just backstory for that. I don't need backstory for that. The more I learned about Anakin after Return of the Jedi, the less I gave a shit about that character. We need to stop this impulse, this horrible, vain impulse to explain everything. I don't need the backstory of how Anakin was created using the Force. I don't need that. I don't need all this shit about the Jedi or the Trade Federation or the Clone Wars. It was cool to hear about the Clone Wars, but I didn't need to see them in action because it sucked. And the more we explain about the Jedi and the more we explain about all this stuff and midichlorians and all the other bullshit, the less cool, mysterious, and interesting it is. So the Acolyte broke its promise, and it seems to be now just paving the road to the Skywalker story or to Anakin's creation. But ultimately, that scene, I'm getting off track, obviously, but that scene with Luke and the pain on his face and that rage and the grief and all of that culminating in that juicy, amazing scene in Return of the Jedi, then you compare that to this scene in The Acolyte. And it's just, I'm sorry, it pales in comparison. And the fact that we can't help but compare the two things is really problematic, because we can't help it, because they are shoving it in our face. They are literally copying lines from that scene and putting them into this and having, Osha go the other way, where she, instead of using restraint, she kills Soul. But it's so stupid. It's not earned. See, none of this is earned. I see some of the good ideas that went into making this show, but none of them are executed well, and nothing is earned. Osha's turn to the dark side, it just happens. Just because, she learns that Soul killed her mother. Well, like a rational person in a scenario like this would ask, like, well, why? Why you were protecting me from what? Like, what did she do? Like, what are you? Well, and maybe Soul would have been like, well, look, I didn't want to. I didn't want to kill your mother. I wasn't doing it just to protect you. I did it because she turned into a motherfucking smoke monster and started evaporating your sister. I thought she was going to kill me and your sister and everyone else. That's what I thought. And I was acting in self-defense. And in that moment, I didn't come there to kill her. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to. This was never my intention. And I should have told you the truth, but I was trying to protect you. But also, like, okay, why does May just ditch all this stuff? She's going and she's killed like 3 Jedi. No, 2. She's killed 2 Jedi working for her master, this Khmer, the stranger, whatever, the Sith guy. And then she just sort of like gives it up. And then like when they leave in the end, she doesn't want to go with them. So they wipe her memory. What would have been much more satisfying to have an arc, if you're going to go with the twin thing, which I think is gimmicky and stupid. But if you're going with the twin thing, having Osha move to the dark while May moved to the light would have been interesting. At least you could have put some drama in there. Then when May goes to the light and tries to stop Osha or something, Osha kills her. Boom. That's where you get that. That's where you can get that real emotional moment and that real turn to the dark side, right? Killing her own sister. Ooh. They never go there. They're too chicken shit. And now we've got memory wiped May hanging out with Vernastra, the green lady, the green Jedi. This is another thing that doesn't make sense to me is why do they constantly cover everything up? Like, it didn't make sense in the beginning for Indara and Soul and them to cover up what was happening on Brendok. They should have gone right back to the Jedi and been like, hey, there's a Vergence here. There was these 4 switches using dark magic, blah, 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 blah. We need this, we got to investigate. We should all head back to Brendok. Brendok. Oh, Brendok, baby. But then again, and then this one, Vernastra, if I'm saying her name right, if that really is your name, she, when talking with the Senate Tribunal, is like, all this bad shit happened and it was all Soul. He did it and then he killed himself. Why? Why not just tell him what actually happened at this point? Why are we still covering things up? And then the really, really shitty thing is that this cover-up, which involves Sith, that she knows about now, is taken to Yoda in the last minute. So now Yoda's complicit in this cover-up. Yoda knows about the Sith, yada, yada. They're changing all kinds of shit that just doesn't need to be changed. But honestly, whatever. Because this all then goes into the stupid prequels, which I don't care about anyways. And if I had... I am such an ultra conservative when it comes to Star Wars that if I had my wish, I would decanonize everything after the original trilogy except for Andor and Rogue One. The books aren't canon anymore anyways. But if I could take the books, I would canonize the Thrawn trilogy. I don't know if I would canonize anything else, but even the prequels I would decanonize because I just don't like them. So, and I think that I'm right about this and that other people are wrong. What can I say? What else? Ultimately, this show, it got us to this point with all this backstory on Brendok and what happened there and like making Soul out to be this bad guy who just sticks to his guns at the very end, like never apologizes. His character is such a mess. Like it just doesn't make sense because he's not a villain. He's clearly noble. He thought that the girls were in trouble. He genuinely thought that. He wanted to help them and he didn't go there trying to seek violence, but he did go there to try to help them. He only used violence when he was threatened and believed somebody else's life was threatened. Even though Coral was extremely hostile, like right off the bat. And yet they're trying to paint him and the Jedi as bad. There's all this shit, like this show seems so intent on making the Jedi appear to be bad, corrupt, myopic, short-sighted, everything. It's just, have we not done enough deconstructing of the Jedi yet? Because it's not that interesting. I mean, there are interesting, like there's an interesting story here, right? Which is like, why did Khmer go to the dark side? What's his history with his master Versutrabusha, or whatever her name is? That's an interesting story. I do think it's interesting to look at how some Jedi are corrupted or how they go to the dark side. I think that we've already looked at how the Jedi Order has been arrogant and has, not seen the danger when it was right in front of them and all this. We did that in the prequels. We had, Luke deconstructed in in The Last Jedi. We've done all of that already. We haven't had like heroic Jedi, except for in like Ahsoka, basically. I mean, even Obi-Wan Kenobi, he was like a mopey dope idiot who like little baby Leia had to take around like, here, Grandpa Obi, here, do this. I'm much smarter and more capable than you. and it's like, can we get a cool Jedi story at one point? Like, this could have been that, a cool detective Jedi story with a serial killer Sith. What a badass, right? I don't care if it's a white dude or a black chick or whatever. Like, give us some badass Jedi and let them go do badass stuff. Because we've had a lot of the subversive deconstructing stuff over the last few years, and it's like, okay, guys, like, I get it. You all come to this franchise wanting to deconstruct it, but maybe it would be more cool if we just actually got some good heroic shit also. Because frankly, none of them are doing as good a job as Andor at deconstruction, which is, and it's not even really deconstruction. It's showing us like this other angle into the Empire and whatnot, right? I do think that the line, above all else, try, from Nemec in that show is wonderful. And I think that's exactly how you're supposed to like twist things a bit. It's subtle, it's brief, it's well written. Thank you. As far as the Acolyte's concerned, I'm going to go back and maybe do like a full season review of kind of the biggest things that went wrong in this show. And maybe talk a little bit about, I've already kind of talked about what I would do differently, how I would make this kind of a murder investigation with more of a police procedural and all that. I think it could have been really cool. I think if Sol and Indara had been like the detectives and they were hunting down Khmer, and then we got the reveal of Darth Plagueis, whatever his name is, and maybe a Yoda cameo. I could have been down with all of that. But as it stands, I just don't think that this show earned any of its narrative arcs. And that's why at the end of the day, it's so unsatisfying. And on top of that, it's just very poorly written. And I know a lot of like weird of the new Star Wars fans who love this stuff are like, oh, you're just using the bad writing trope. It's like, well, no, actually, like this dialogue is often very, very cringy. Like, it's hard to listen to because it's so on the nose. And these contrived circumstances that all of our heroes find themselves in are ludicrous. And half this show is filler. And somehow it feels like we rushed everything meaningful in this show, and yet it was really, really slow and filled with fluff. Like, you always know a show is a mess when it feels like we didn't have enough time with any of it to get to where we went, and yet all of it was filler. Like, that's contradiction in terms in a way. But it's like none of the characters went through the arcs they needed to go through to travel to where they were at the end. And yet the whole time we're trudging around these episodes that feel like we could have condensed them all into a 2-hour movie. So anyways, that's enough. I've rambled long enough. I wish the show had been better. Alas, woe is me. Yet another fail for Disney Plus. I hope to God that somebody at Lucasfilm, that somebody at Disney, that Bob Iger or whoever it is says, you know what, these shows, we need to figure out who our target audience is again. We need to recenter this around, frankly, around dads and kids, right? I'm sorry, that's it. Like, if the dads and the kids of the world are happy, you probably will sell toys, ticket rides, DVDs, whatever the fuck, right? Disney Plus subscriptions. You cannot keep appealing to an audience that doesn't really exist for this franchise. All right? Like, I'm sorry. When The Mandalorian came out, who was the first to be super into it? Me, the dad. Who watched that with me? My kids, my girlfriend, everybody wanted to watch that show because it was good for everybody. Now, this show, who does this appeal to? My kids don't care about it. I don't care about it. I don't see them selling a bunch of OSHA and May toys. Like, come on. Disney, remember who your audience is. For this, for your princess movies, for whatever, you got to remember who your audience is. Who is the audience for this show? Who is it? I don't think it's the majority of Star Wars fans. All right. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Let me know what you think in the comments. Peace.